How's it going, everyone? I hope you guys are all doing well. Welcome back to another episode of Vaughn Coleman Presents. I am, of course, your host, Vaughn Coleman. And before we start, I do want to shout out some campaigns I got going on. So we are going to be talking about Westerns. And it's actually funny that we're going to be talking about that because I have my first ever published work is going to be a 10-page short story that, hold on, where is it? I thought I had it. It was right. Oh, here it is. Okay, it was open in another. For some reason, like Google has a strange thing. It's a strange thing where it, at least on my PC, it doesn't have Kickstarters to go. But if you look here, it doesn't. You don't see the Western, but I do have a Western that I'm making. It's a 10-pager. It's going to be included in this trade paperback. So make sure you sign up. Next week it is launching, so we'll be promoting that. I have some other books to shout out too. Real quick, I just want to shout out my book. Living Legends, set 20 years after World War III, this teenage boy is struck by lightning while holding a mysterious crystal in his hands, and he gets these electricity superpowers, including he can manipulate and generate electricity, and he has super speed. And so if that's interesting to you, definitely check that out. And without further ado, you've heard enough from me. Let's bring in our esteemed guest. I've had him before, and I'm so happy to be having him again. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Mike Barron. How's it going, Mike?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Vaughn.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. I'm a fan of your work. So there we go. So first off, you have two books. It's funny, actually. I have it around here somewhere. But when I was working with Michael Golden at a convention, and Pat Broderick was there, and he gave me something with Bronze Star. And I remember when I was interviewing you, you told him that this is the best work of Pat Broderick's career. And then I told him that. I said, yeah, Mike said it's the best work of your career. And he said, I agree with you. I agree with Mike. He's right. This is the best work of my career.
Yeah, it's astonishing because most comic book artists aren't in it for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen so many great artists who have dropped out simply because as you get older, you don't have the ambition that lets you pencil and ink a page a day. Not that everybody's up to that speed, but even long-time established artists who take their time, they don't want to do continuity anymore. It's just too much work.
Mm-hmm.
But Pat's an exception. I think one of the reasons is that this is his creation too, and that he loves Westerns. And not only is it the greatest work of his career, it's so astonishing to see an artist achieve this plateau at his stage in life. And if you want to know what I mean, just go to the site, bronzestarcomic.com, and scroll down through the art, and especially scroll down to that black and white page. Take a look at that. And that's the reason we're offering an oversized artist edition black and white version.
Oh, wow. I didn't know. Oh, Bronze Star Comic. Oh, leads you to the Fund My Comic. Oh, okay. That's easy. That's really easy. Okay, great. Let me go ahead and pull that up on the screen. The link is in the chat. But here it is again. I didn't realize you had a oversized. That's awesome. So I wanted to ask because that you touched on already, Mike. You always, have so much to say in such a short amount of time. And already I wanted to, no, it's good. It's all good because I wanted to write a few things down because one thing I was curious about is you mentioned, and I totally agree with this, that a lot of artists, drop off. One of the first ones that comes to mind, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think we all think of like David Mazzucchelli as someone who just did so much in such a short amount of time, and then he just kind of disappeared. Whereas, and I also notice, especially in recent years, a lot of the best, brightest artists just switch to doing covers. And they don't do this, but to have an artist, go through all of this stuff and just be doing page after page, and it looks phenomenal. It has grit to it.
Not only that, he added pages to the script.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's great. So he made it longer because that's
right.
I'm sure you probably feel this as a more experienced writer than I am, but like often I'm sure you feel like, all right, let me not drive my artist insane. And so you try and like condense things, right? But that's great that he added more. I'm really excited for this book. It's 48 pages.
The main story is 55 pages, and then there's an 8-page coda.
8-page. Oh, that's awesome.
It's a short story that takes place at Cobb's Gap after the events of the main story.
Pat kind of does look like a Western character
Yeah, he
a little
does.
bit. I remember seeing that thing that when I saw him. And what's funny too is I didn't even realize this. So like one of my favorite comic book characters is Tim Drake. And I didn't even realize until after I talked to him, like, oh my God, he created one of my favorite characters. I had no idea. And which I found out before I talked to him, but nonetheless, his stuff is great, man. I'm really excited. So you mentioned Westerns, and I'm curious, uh, what are some of your favorite Westerns?
Number one, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance.
Oh, that one's so good.
John Wayne, John Ford, Lee Marvin is the bad guy. You can't go wrong. And that explores a familiar theme in Westerns, one of John Ford's recurring themes, and also Sam Peckinpah, which is the closing of the frontier.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens to the wild men, the pioneers, the vigilantes who went out there to settle the West when civilization catches up with them. Which brings us to the next one, Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch, a masterpiece, an existential thriller. An existential thriller is, you know from the beginning when the protagonists are doomed. But that movie revolutionized the Western for its portrayal of violence. It's a very bittersweet story about aging outlaws pulling off one last heist so they can retire. And the railroad has hired all these Pinkertons, headed by Robert Ryan, to bring them back dead. And Ernest Borgnine is brilliant in that. There's so many great actors.
I haven't seen The Wild Bunch, but I have the DVD because I bought The Searchers, which is probably my favorite, and it came with like a triple feature.
Wow.
So
your mind will be blown.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I read the script for The Searchers actually because I went to film school, and there one of our assignments for class was read a script for a movie we had never seen. And I chose The Searchers and then just direct scenes from it, like in my style. Of course, I did a really shitty low budget version. And then the pandemic happened. And so I have it on YouTube. I had to act as like John Wayne and his brother in one scene. So I forget if I put a hat on or something. I don't know what I did, but I did reverse shot with myself in my kitchen, pretended it was the West. But that was fun. But yeah, I mean that, and then Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. I mean, I love John Wayne and John Ford. I think I remember we watched the Man Who Shot Liberty Valance in class the semester after I'd seen The Searchers. And another thing that I remember my professor said that I thought was profound was that, and by the way, this is the second conversation I've had about this movie. You and Graham Nolan have similar taste. I remember he also talked about the idea that what's the line? It's like if printing the legend, it's like when the legend becomes the story, print the legend or something like that.
That's right.
And it feels like that was almost like Ford's statement on his own work in the Western genre as a whole.
Yeah, I think so. And of course, John Ford has done so many brilliant movies. If you haven't seen Spielberg's latest, The Fabelmans, it ends with young Fabelman having a brief meeting with John Ford, which is highly entertaining.
I haven't seen that one yet. I'll have to check it out. I know you're a big movie guy too. I have a lot of Westerns to get through. I remember I went through a phase where I was watching a lot like Rio Bravo and
great movie. That's Howard Hawks.
Yeah, I know that was a response to like communism at the time, right?
It was the response to High Noon.
High Noon.
Howard Hawks was so offended by the idea that nobody would pitch in to help the sheriff that he made Rio Bravo, where everybody pitches in to help the sheriff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked that. I like that movie, and I also like. Don't get me wrong. I think stories with an edge and some gritty realism is good too. But I'm very sick of like nihilistic stories, and I think there's so many. That's why, like, even my superhero comic, I wanted to do a return to form of like what uplifted me when I was a kid. And I think we have so many people that are being taught that it's intellectual to basically hate humanity. And I think that's what makes the Western hero so pure. And even the way you write characters like the Punisher, so many people write him in such a nihilistic way. And I always feel that, and I don't get me wrong, I think he's entertaining almost no matter how people
can be.
But I think, yeah, he can be. But like your Punisher, I remember would do things like, even there's that one issue I want to say where he's at the border. I want to say it was issue 11, where he just has that conversation with that woman, or he just helps people out, almost like a Western hero, I feel. And so have you ever written a Western before this?
I have done a couple of Westerns for my publisher, Wolfpack, but they're published under a pseudonym. If you want to read Westerns, I recommend Peter Brandvold. He's the most popular Western writer in the world right now. He's an old friend of mine. But I would not have written this if I hadn't asked Pat, what do you want to draw? And he says, I want to draw a supernatural Western. So there we are. And, you know, I love the form. I feel I could handle it. But I'm working in so many genres already that the only Western that I'm committed to is Bronze Star. And we have more Bronze Star tales coming up.
I want to play the trailer and stuff because I'm excited for the supernatural Western and all that. And I want to ask questions, but I do want to address my chat. Genuine Comics, who, by the way, I read he just has a book out right now. Perfect 10 issue 4. I read 1 through 3 on the plane. Fantastic stuff. You know, really? I bought it. Yeah, Mike, you'd like his writing. I think his writing is fantastic because went in because obviously, listen, it has a hot chick on the cover, so I'm interested. But when it has good writing and great art, you know, it's great.
Okay, Genuine, let's trade comics. I'll get in touch with you later.
Yeah, definitely check him out. He's great. I've had him on for an interview. Someone says, my personal rival, Ellie Munoz, says, question for Mike Barron. I often say that Vaughn is the next Jim Shooter. Am I praising or insulting him? I don't remember you saying that about me.
Well, I think Jim made the trains run on time, and I like him a lot. I don't consider it an insult. I'm sure there are people that have a tiff with him, but I'm not one of them. And Vaughn is not like Jim Shooter personality-wise.
You don't think so?
No.
I'm just curious. I remember when I first had dinner with Jim Shooter, or when I had dinner with him at like an event, you were the one, you reached out to me and said, tell him I said hi. And then I did say hi to Jim Shooter for you. And he was like, oh, tell Mike I say hi back. Genuine Comics says, I'm game, Mr. Barron.
Great.
Of course, my pleasure. Michael Dietz, is it Dietz? I'm sorry. I'm normally good with English. I read the novel The Big Sky as a kid. Great tale of a young mountain man's journey and his emptiness as the frontier begins to close for him.
It's a new one on me.
Yeah, I hadn't heard. I was hoping you would know. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do this. I wanted to pull up this trailer first, and then we could talk about it.
The Civil War was America's bloodiest conflict. Over 500,000 died to preserve national unity. When the war ended, Confederates like Harley Brogdon headed west, shooting game for the Army and gambling. When a card game turns deadly, Harley shoots in self-defense, killing the card sharp who threw down first.
You're frozen, Vaughn. Vaughn, if you can hear me, I'm going to blank out and then I'm going to try and get back.
Of her own. But when Nor's posse arrives seeking vengeance, the stage is set for a showdown with unimaginable horrors from the deepest pits of hell, and every secret will be exposed. Eisner winner Mike Barron and acclaimed illustrator Pat Broderick present one of the weirdest westerns that Comic Dom has ever seen. Bronze Star, a thrilling tale of love, revenge, and supernatural terror from the minds of two legendary creators. It's not the monster you're looking for. Order your copy at bronzestarcomic.com.
Oh!
That's awesome, man. I'm really excited to take a look at that book. And that's the trailers, by the way, that the company, what's the company's name?
Big Productions.
Big Productions. They do great trailers. I like the narration and everything, the little animations.
We're lucky to get Sam Elliott as our narrator.
Oh, if only, dude. That, I mean, it might as well. He does a great. That's another person who just Sam Elliott has not aged a day in what 30 years. You don't think? Yeah, you think a little bit.
He does. He has aged a little bit.
A little bit, maybe. That guy was born for westerns too.
Yeah, he
I
was.
mean, his Tombstone is another one. I love. That's another. That's probably in my Mount Rushmore. Granted, you're probably more. You have a much.
Well, I think Tombstone could easily elbow its way into my top 10 westerns. But I want to mention two starring Burt Lancaster. Ulzana's Raid and Valdez is Coming. They're both brilliant. They both released in the early 70s. They're highly underrated. I can't recommend them highly enough. And they both have Z in the title. That's how you can remember them. Ulzana's Raid and Valdez is Coming.
Gotcha. We got. I'll have to look into those. I don't think I've seen those ones. What about Butch Cassidy? Is that one up there for you?
Nope.
No. You know what's funny is Mike. I'm curious because I was talking with Michael Golden and I were talking about westerns a lot this weekend. Funny enough, it's actually perfect. Not planned at all. That it just. I was thinking about that. I'm like, oh wow, we're just had this conversation, and he said that he doesn't consider Butch Cassidy to be a western. It's more like a romance.
Well, it is. And also, I'm at a point in my life where I have to believe the story could happen before I can enter into it completely. And that one's just so cutie pie and sanitized that I just never buy it. And you know, and I love, who's the guy that wrote that?
I should know that. You know, I should, as a filmmaker, I should really, and as a writer.
Well, so should I too.
I should pay more attention to screenwriters. I really should. I always talk about how they don't get enough credit, and then I don't give them enough. William Goldman.
That's right. William Goldman, great writer. He wrote the script of Marathon Man, I believe.
Yes. Misery. Oh, Misery too. Princess Bride. Oh, wow. Yeah. I need
That's
to.
Right. That's right.
Writers. Let's see. Princess Bride. Some that I haven't seen. Some that I'm embarrassed to not have seen. Bridge Too Far. Haven't seen that.
Well, you got a lot of time, Vaughn. You got a lot of time. Yeah.
I do. And a lot. But the thing is, there's always new classics being made.
Not so much lately.
Well, not so much lately. I was going to say that. Yeah. Although you guys, you indie guys are doing some really solid stuff. Like I have an indie pile. I was on the plane just going through a lot of my independent stuff to read. And I have a lot, and there's always new campaigns to back, and this is certainly one of them. Right
Scroll
here.
down to that black and white page.
Is it down here? Ooh.
Right there.
Look at that detail, man. He inked his own work here.
Oh, yeah.
And did you say he does a page a day?
I doubt that. No.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is crazy detail.
Yeah, Pat's been working on this for, I'd say 6 months, but it's done, and it's at the printer.
Wow. So when does this campaign close out then?
Monday night.
Monday night. Okay, great. I'll make sure that I'm backed. And I am curious. So is this going to be available? Does Big have a website?
I think they do, but you'd have to Google it. It's Big Productions. They're in Chattanooga.
Right. But the best way to get it would be through the crowdfund, right?
You bet.
Okay. And I really like Private American, by the way. I hadn't talked about it yet. Totally not that controversial, in my opinion. I mean,
only to shrieking hysterics.
Who never read it,
right?
By the way, I really, and I mentioned this last time, but I'd love it if they read the issue of Punisher where he burned that. I think it was issue 3 you wrote where he burns the white supremacists alive. It's interesting that no one talks about that.
I'd have to go back and go through the collection, Vaughn, as I don't remember those stories.
Right, I have it right here, actually. It was, I want to say 3 where he burns the white supremacists alive. It's interesting that no one mentions that you wrote that, though. Always, 3.
I have to say, I'm working on Private American 2, and their heads are going to explode when they read Private American 2.
Oh, wow. I can't wait. I mean, I like my head where it is, but I can't wait to read it anyway.
Well,
It's
wear a helmet. You know, the helmet will keep your
oh,
head.
the helmet will keep you. Yeah.
Yeah,
This is Pat's best work, I think, said
it
Hojo.
is. It is.
I don't know if because I know if he created Tim Drake, I don't know in what issue that was, but I think I must have read some of Pat's work. I've definitely loved his art, like whenever I've seen it.
Well, he did Firestorm and
Yeah.
Micronauts, among others.
Oh, did he follow Michael Golden with Micronauts then?
I don't know if he was the next guy, but he did a bunch of issues.
Gotcha. Let's see. Hojo said, I met Sam Elliott in a bar near Tombstone when I was stationed in
Cool.
Arizona. That's awesome. Yeah, I've never been to Arizona. Oh, no, I drove through the desert at night, but I've never been to there. I'd love to spend more time in the West in general, although it never really, I'm sure it'll never be as cool as this. Then again, it might not
Well,
have been cool to
if
live
you
in
get
it.
off the beaten trail, there's an awful lot of West out here that has not been civilized. There are barely any roads here. I live in Colorado. When I first got out here, I was a hiking fool. We went all over the upper central part of Colorado. We did a lot of mountains. I can't climb mountains anymore. I wish I could, but there are ghost towns to visit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, even the Colorado, I think, is probably one of the most, when my friend and I drove cross country, probably that and Utah, I'd say, are the two most beautiful states to drive through in the whole country.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that when you head west on Highway 14, which is one of the most long, lonely, boring highways in the country, that if you keep going, it turns into one of the most spectacular drives in the world.
Are you talking is that the one that's through the mountains?
Well, yeah, they're all through the mountains, but this one cuts by Fort Collins and then goes up the Poudre River, and that's what makes it spectacular. It keeps climbing and climbing to Cameron Pass, and it's just every time you turn a corner, there's the roads like this, as this crazy canyon, and there's just another sight that'll make your jaw drop. Same with Interstate 70. If you head west on Interstate 70 through Denver, that turns into a spectacular drive.
I mean, yeah, I think about my road trip and we stopped in every city, but first thing I think of every time I think of this road trip is it was like a 12 to 14 hour drive day. And I had two of those. We had one through Nebraska, not very memorable. And then one through Utah and Colorado to Vegas. And that was like just the drive itself. I mean, if I drove alone, it might not have been as fun, but it was just beautiful. The West in general is beautiful. And I know people look at it as just like, I grew up on the coast, right near the beach, but I almost like fascinate about the West. It's almost like because I didn't really grow up with it.
Right.
And so I'm really interested in this. You have an artist edition here.
That's what you're looking at. Yeah, there's a picture of the cover just above that.
Oh, let me scroll up.
That's
It's
it
gorgeous.
right there. It's big. I think it's 11 by 15 or something.
Oh, wow. How much is that? That's got to be
I don't know.
75. But it's gonna be a beauty though.
Yeah,
Only
it's going to be a
150
collector's item.
How many people? Okay, only 47 people left to back this. That's gonna be a beauty to look at. I mean, it already is just on here. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
I'm definitely checking that out. And that's also great to see so many people interested in a new IP. That's, new story. I mean, I guess it's 2 seasoned professionals, but it's still something special. So what were your inspirations when it comes to writing the story?
You mean Bronze Star?
Yeah.
Well, Pat said, I want to write a supernatural Western. And I immediately thought the sheriff is a werewolf. And that's why his star is made of bronze, because he can't wear a star made of silver. But that's not the big reveal. It's not the true evil in this story. That's something completely different. But it's a factor. And the sheriff is a very likable guy, except for that one time a month.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So he's the werewolf then?
He is a werewolf. And when he changes, he really can't control himself.
That's cool. It's I like characters like that, and I think it's a really unique twist. I don't know if I've seen that before in a Western, a werewolf sheriff. I think that's new territory. Was that your idea or Pat's?
Mine.
Mine, yours. All right. So Pat kind of came up with like the aesthetic. It sounds like
That's what he wanted to write. He wanted to draw a supernatural Western.
And there you go. And from there, that's all you need, Mike. I guess you really just. That's. I love the just going for it. Is this gonna have a sequel or is it?
Yes.
Great. Okay, guys, it's gonna have a sequel.
God willing, awesome. And the creek don't rise.
Awesome. And is it meant to be like an issue 1 or is it more like a self-contained kind of?
It's entirely self-contained. There are no cliffhangers in this. When you put out a book this size, you want to tell a complete story. Now, Private American surprised me because it doesn't end that way. It doesn't end on a cliffhanger, but it ends on a promise that there's more to come.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly how I felt. Like there could easily be a second one, but it's also, if there wasn't, you would still have a complete story. You'd be disappointed, but you'd have a complete story. Wow, I really like this art, man. And it's shipping out, I guess, like right after you're sending off to the printer.
We should be shipping books by the end of October.
Great. I know this is on Kickstarter too. If any of you guys, is it not on there anymore?
No, it's on Indiegogo. Until Monday at midnight. And if you lose it, you'll still be able to get the book at Fund My Comic, which is what bronzestarcomic.com will take you to. But all the perks and levels will be gone. It'll just be the straight book.
Okay. So it's going to act almost as like a permanent store.
Yeah.
Oh, we got 20,000 on Indiegogo too. I'm going to share that link in the chat just because I know some people prefer Indiegogo. I remember like Jimmy Palmiotti sharing it right away when it was on Kickstarter.
I just saw Jimmy 3 weeks ago down in Colorado Springs.
Oh, really? How was that?
Great.
Yeah, Jimmy's a great guy. I tried to get him. I remember when he did his last campaign, and it was like the same week as San Diego. So just everything was crazy. I know that's like you don't do San Diego anymore, right? Did you ever?
I haven't been there in many years. It's too crowded for me.
Yeah, I hear that it was very comic book focused this year.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. So I have a question. So you're doing this, and then you have another one. I know you're from Colorado, but you're going to talking about states in America. You've got another one that you're exploring a little bit.
And I have to tell people I've been to Florida many, many times.
Oh, I know. I assume so.
And the people that read those books say, Mike nailed it. I know these guys. And the next one is Hogzilla, in which Gary and Crystal take on a 1,000-pound feral hog. But that's just part of the story. There's a lot more to it than that. And people who have read the novels or the graphic novel know that it's a rocky road for Gary. He goes from rags to riches to rags to riches to rags to riches. He's in and out of jail all the time. He's got a hair-trigger temper. He likes to get high. He likes to get stoned. But he's got a heart of gold, and he'll give you the shirt off his back.
Yeah, I remember reading the first, or not the first. I read some issues that I found and at a store, and they were great. And I really definitely want to check this out. So let me ask you a question. So for the books, because I haven't read the books yet, are they separate stories?
Yeah, there are 3 novels. They're unrelated. You can get them all in a bunch. They're all on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and put in Florida Man Mike Barron, and they'll all pop up. They're by far my most popular novels. And I'm very proud of them. I wish that my other novels were doing as well. I'm proud of all those books I put out. But I find myself writing in 3 genres. The Florida Man is laugh out loud funny. The biker novels are hard-boiled crime, very noirish. And I've written 4 horror novels that have been very well received. But you can't trumpet those unless you concentrate totally and pump out like 1 or 2 horror novels a year. Or if you're Stephen King, 12.
Gotcha. So Yeah, I mean that's crazy. I know Stephen King is mostly known as a horror guy, but he does other stuff. So you do a lot of novels then. It sounds like you're
No, I
constantly
don't. You know, it
or
seems to me, uh, to others, I don't. I have 17 or 18 in print, but I can only really write 2 novels a year. Uh, and I would do more, but I'm getting a much better reception. Crowdfunding my graphic novels. There's a growing demand for them for a couple of reasons, and one, as you know, the traditional comics industry is circling the drain, and there are many reasons for this.
Mhm.
Not the least of which is the rise of video games,
Yeah.
but also because they're putting out content that nobody wants.
100%. I think I'm curious as to how you're able to like. So I know obviously you've been doing this for a long time, but 2 novels a year, you say that like it's not much. And maybe it's just because I'm so amateur that I'm struggling to put out my first book over the course of years, my first comic. I can't imagine doing novels, but I guess you get really a routine of it.
Yeah, you
What is
have
that?
to. Yeah, you got to go. If you're writing a novel, you got to do 2,000 words a day. That's all there is to it. And I don't do that because I'm jumping around from project to project. I'm working on the fourth Florida Man novel now. I just turned in the 10th biker novel. And for those who are interested, it co-stars Chuck Dixon's character, Vaughn Cade. I'm very excited about that. It's the longest biker novel, and it's the most complicated because it has a lot to do with the Civil War.
Oh, okay. So that's really cool. You got some. So you've been playing with some Civil War stuff. Have you ever considered setting something during the Civil War?
I have. In fact, I have a very elaborate outline for a novel, a historical novel I wanted to do someday. It just seems so daunting to me. But I might do it. You never know.
Gotcha. That's so you publish through looks like a lot of different people.
Well, I have 2 publishers. One is Wordfire Press, and that's Kevin J. Anderson's imprint. Kevin, of course, writes the Dune novels,
Oh, okay.
and Kevin publishes at least 500,000 words a year. Well, how does Kevin do that? He writes by dictating into a recording device while hiking through the mountains. Kevin is a crazy mountaineer. He summited every 14er in the state. A 14er is a mountain that's 14,000 feet tall. Some many times. I can't write by talking. I have to see the words on the screen as I set them down. And I think that it leads him to an omnipresent point of view or an omniscient point of view, which is different from a close personal point of view, which I prefer. A close personal point of view is whatever the chapter is, it's told through the perceptions of only one character. But in a Kevin J. Anderson book, he will jump around from viewpoint to viewpoint within the chapter. And you buy it because the omniscient point of view, he knows how to work it.
Gotcha. That's crazy. I love hearing about these creative processes, and it almost feels like mine because I'm always trying to refine mine every day. I was up writing till like 4 a.m. the other night, and I think I got revising. I've been revising the same script for so long, but I was like, okay, this is the last kind of set, but they always seem to be. So we'll see. But I'm starting interiors and stuff, and it seems like you do so much. I'm working on like starting my own publishing company, and I'm realizing that eats up so much time. Do you publish through like a lot of different people then? Do you do work for hire or what exactly?
I do work for hire. I recently completed a graphic novel for Eric July that has to do with the Isom
Oh, wow.
universe.
I didn't know that. Had you announced that yet? I didn't know that.
Not really. I just finished it, but I'm excited about it.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
And I also did a graphic novel based on the child's toy Scruffy Bumps, which is kind of a scary monster cat, which is about animal abusers and what Scruffy Bumps does to animal abusers. It's not really for children. It's more PG-13.
Gotcha. That's It's crazy. There's so much you do, and I'm curious. Can I hear more about this project there, July, or like what can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you that he asked me to give him a story about Gooding. Who is Gooding? Where does he come from? Let me see if I can find this.
Oh wow, Gooding. Okay, so we're learning about where this guy comes from. And is that from ISOM number 2?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll definitely have to check that out. That's really cool. I was just writing that down. Okay, cool. So we've got all these things, and I'm curious. You mentioned so you do work for hire and all kinds of stuff, and you never founded your own company, right? Even though you own, I know you own Nexus with Steve Rude, but you never started your own publisher, did you?
We do now, sort of through Big Productions, which is dedicated to my crowdfunded books, thanks to Chris Brawley, who runs my campaigns and is responsible for the videos. And I think that he's created a new website called baroncomics.com. Let me see if that. Yes, go to baroncomics.com.
All right, baroncomics.com. Great. And do they how do they get in contact with you, Big?
If you go to baroncomics.com, you can sign up for our mailing list. I put out a monthly newsletter, which talks about the stuff I'm working on and also stuff I've been doing that I find amusing. I hope my readers will find amusing. Like Ann and I went to see Blood, Sweat, and Tears last weekend. I'd always wanted to see them. And it was a good show. They recreated the sound accurately, but they had none of the original members. It's become one of these legacy bands which just keep touring on the strength of the love that they engendered when they first appeared, which was in 1967. And I'd always wanted to see them. I'm a big sucker for horn rock, and they did a good job, but it wasn't like having the original members or the fire of the original members. I remember seeing the Rolling Stones in the mid-90s, and they were on fire. I mean, they brought it. And it was most of the original members. There was Keith, Mick, and I think the drummer, I can't think of his name, but they were great. But we go out night after night to hear music here in town. There are a lot of great bands here.
Yeah, I remember. Okay, so you're still big into the music stuff then.
Yeah, I still write about music too. For Remember the Lightning on Substack, I review power pop records. Well, what's power pop? Now, The Who created that term, and it's driving, rhythmically exciting pop music with bridges and hooks and soaring vocal harmonies. The Beatles, the Beach Boys, the Byrds, they're all power pop.
Oh, okay. That's power pop. I don't know if I've heard that term before. Maybe I have. I like music, but I guess I'm not very scholarly. I know what I like, and that's about it. But you write everything. You write music reviews, you write blog posts, you write novels.
I just write about music for the free records.
Did you ever, because you're a big movie guy, write screenplays?
I may have written a screenplay or two. They don't frighten me. And if somebody said, we'd love you to write a screenplay, I'd be happy to do it. But, there are hundreds of great unproduced screenplays in Hollywood, if not thousands. Stuff that's just brilliant. They just can't find a production. And right now, the way to go is independent of Hollywood, because, Hollywood is on life support, and it's partially these lockdowns and the plague, and partially the material that they choose to put out. But that simply creates an audience for independent productions.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. I find that because I have heard that a lot of screenplays don't even get read. Most of them, they sit there and they're never even read because there's just it's like if it doesn't matter, you could write the best script in the world, right? But if no one knows your name and it's not marketable, you think they're going to spend millions of dollars you can think they're even going to pay an intern or even just get an intern to use their time reading it.
Right. That's one reason that comics and graphic novels are popular, is because a movie executive who's very busy and doesn't have time to read anything, he'll pick up a comic or a graphic novel because he can absorb that in a day or two.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun if it's well done.
Right.
And he sees the visuals,
Right. It's also a way to get my big budget ideas. One of the things I was always struggling with is I'm like a big idea kind of guy, and even my smaller ideas end up I had to raise, without even paying my crew, because my crew were my fellow classmates, like over $4,000 just to produce a film that was just all in one house set over 3 days. And I couldn't really pay the actors much. And that was over $4,000, right? And it's like, you could get pages of artwork with that, and like you could have an entire battle sequence with that comic book, and you might even be able to print it. Like that goes a lot farther with a comic book. And so I think that's one of the reasons why that medium is so alluring to me as a creator. And novels obviously is probably even cheaper. I'm sure you just write, okay, there was this massive planetary battle or whatever.
Well, the sad thing about novels is over 1 million novels published a year in the United States. Many of them are self-published, and not all of them are good. But I can name a lot of great authors whose work I revere who gave up because they couldn't make it writing novels. Because the publishers today, it's either the blockbuster or nothing.
Right. It's not. Yeah, I mean that model extends to novels too, huh? Because I remember reading a book on blockbusters in Hollywood and how that totally changed things. I mean, you look at now, it's like they spend most of their budget goes to like this few big budget franchise films. Like they go to things that have an established franchise, and they keep returning to the same well, but they have new ideas that don't really fit in here, and so they kind of throw it in the established thing. And what you have is just almost like a repeat of things, and it's sad. I mean, sometimes you don't always, the artsy films, whatever, don't always get all the spotlight. But I guess that's how it's always.
Well, there are great movies out there if you know where to look. They're
Yeah.
less than ever, but they're out there. One that I think is great is called Let Him Go, and it stars Kevin Costner and Diane Lane as two ranchers in Montana whose son marries a woman and they have a child, and then the horse bucks the son off and he dies, and their daughter-in-law marries into a family of criminals that live in North Dakota, and Kevin Costner sees her new husband shoving her and then slapping the 6-year-old child, and he knows he has to go get that child back. It's one of the most realistic and exciting thrillers I've ever seen.
I will absolutely check that out. That's high praise from you. And I'm wondering, with all these big budget blockbusters and stuff, if you think there's going to be an appeal to like return to the smaller stuff.
I think so.
I think so too. What about Westerns as a genre? Because I know they kind of died out, even though they've stayed around. They're not as big. Do you think there's going to be a big return to Westerns?
I don't know about a big return, but I do know they will never die out because people love Westerns. I mean, Yellowstone is a Western for all intents and purposes, and so are its two spin-offs, 1883 and 1923. I haven't seen those yet. I have seen Yellowstone. And there are Westerns being produced, a pretty good one. It's called Old Henry.
Oh, hold on. Your audio.
It's my elbow. I hit this damn button with the elbow. Old Henry.
Old Henry.
Yeah. It's about this guy living off the grid in the West when some criminals come and start giving him grief. And it's quite a surprise. Here, hang on a second. I'll tell you a little bit more about it.
By the way, I did have I didn't want to interrupt you, but I did have a question in the chat for us as writers. How detailed is your visualization? Meaning, I've gotten to the point where sometimes I could see fully detailed hyper 3D things with my third eye. Weird, I know. Oh, I didn't know you were also a creator, Ellie Munoz. Yeah, I'll let Mike take this one because he's the professional.
When I have my protagonist enter a room, or anybody who owns the point of view, I ask myself, what does he see? What does he hear? What does he smell? What does he feel? And those are the details that set up a scene and make it credible. Now, you can't go on for hours and hours about the texture of the carpet, but you can mention things that are important to the scene because they reveal character. A guy goes to see a magnate who wants to hire him, and it's on the 50th floor of a skyscraper that the magnate owns, with a floor-to-ceiling window looking out on the city. He's got a freestanding furniture cluster where they can meet and have coffee. He's got an assistant that brings things in. Those are the kind of things that set the scene.
Gotcha. I was writing that down because that's fast. So I never like so when they enter a room, it's what does the main character see, and that in turn is what you should see.
Yeah, another thing that a novelist once told me was, whoever wants something the most owns the point of view.
Okay, I'm writing these down, by the way.
One more. You make them laugh a little bit, you make them cry a little bit, you scare the hell out of them, and that's entertainment.
All right, make them cry,
laugh, cry, scare. You got to get it in order. Laugh, cry, scare.
Okay.
Laugh comes first.
I see. I might have gotten the order a little wrong in my comic book then.
Well, that doesn't mean your stories don't. There are no rules.
In my issue 1, I mean, I don't think they're necessarily, but like in terms of the emotional spectrum, I think I make them cry, laugh, scare. I think is the version.
Nothing wrong with that if it works.
Because that cliffhanger, it was in issue 1, so I wanted to kind of build up. That's another thing too, is balancing tone. I know you've balanced. Speaking of balance, I mean, so many genres you mentioned. I mean, you did sci-fi and superhero with Nexus. You've done, action, crime, Western, horror, like so many different genres. Do you have any favorites, or do you have a certain mood you go into when you start writing?
Well, my favorite is hard-boiled noir crime. That's what the Biker series is all about. Biker is Josh Pratt, a reformed motorcycle hoodlum who went to prison. He found God in prison. He comes out determined to turn his life around. And the reason I'm writing, the reason that many successful novelists are writing, is because of John D. MacDonald and his Travis McGee series. You may not know the name, but you've certainly seen the movie Cape Fear, either version. He wrote that. But Travis McGee is his archetypal loner, tarnished knight who down these mean streets must go righting wrongs. And that's the type of character Josh Pratt is. And in that, he's part of a long literary tradition that includes Philip Marlowe, The Continental Op, Sam Spade.
Wow, I wrote that. I'm embarrassed to say I've never seen Cape Fear. I'm embarrassed to say I haven't seen either version.
Well, that's okay, Vaughn. You got plenty of time.
Yeah, I got to make it. I'm occupying it all writing.
Hey, I gotta bail now.
Oh, okay. No worries, Mike. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime, Mike. Everyone make sure to check out all of Mike's campaigns. Thank you so much for coming on, Mike. It's been an absolute blast. And
my pleasure, guys.
Have a good one. See you. And thank you guys so much for watching. I do want to shout out my next guest is going to be this Sunday. We're figuring out the time, but I am, of course, having Vreeny. So she's going to be doing her Fiend. I'll post. I mean, you guys probably already know her. I've interviewed her before. Most of you in the chat might know her, but in case you don't, Rena Chakowski, she's a great artist and writer too. She's doing her first, and this is actually exciting for me because I'm a writer, and the way she talks, even though she's an artist, she really does talk like a writer. That's one of the things I'll bring up in my interview with her. But let's see, definitely subscribe to Meaning if you haven't already, because she's doing her launch stream. It's probably going to be all day, and knowing her, all night on Saturday. I'll definitely make an appearance for sure. And then I am going to be streaming with her, interviewing her on Sunday. We haven't figured out a time yet. I imagine she's super busy, but we did set that up. The thumbnail should be up soon. It should be scheduled soon. So definitely check that out. And real quick, I mentioned my earlier campaigns, which if you haven't already, please make sure to check that out. But I didn't mention this one, and that is Brutor, which is written by me, art by Bobby Chrysopis, who's a good friend of mine. He's the creator of Brutor. It's set in it's set in a Soviet Union run world where this mutant freak who doesn't know his past, his origins, who's been experimented on and told he was less than human his whole life, finally breaks free, and he heads to this big city to find his true purpose in life and find out his identity and fight back against the people that oppressed him for so long. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely sign up for Brutor. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Hope to see you guys Sunday. And also, the Western short story called Land of the Lawless that I worked on is going to be in the Tragedy trade paperback, which will be launching Tuesday. And then I'll be interviewing Phil Russert, I believe, who's the writer of Tragedy, on Wednesday. So definitely check that out, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all the great questions and everything. And I will be seeing you guys next time. Peace out. Have a good one. Love you all.